This is Brother Augustine here. Welcome, one and all. Please let me know if you can hear me. It looks like I should be heard by the microphone. Someone let me know. Can you hear me? Yay or nay? Somebody, everybody can hear me. You love to see it. I'm going to give people a few minutes to get in here. You already know when the St. Irenaeus shirt comes out, it's time to debunk some serious heresy. We need to make more shirts like this, huh? It's a Catholic store that makes this shirt, but I think it's called Saint Wave. But my goodness, is that a cool design. As for the upside down triangle, my least favorite part of the design, I'm going to say it is God's wisdom funneling into the mind and the nous of the great Saint Irenaeus of Lyon, the first OG destroyer of heresies. I think you can get it on Etsy and places like that, the Catholic store, Saint Wave. I'm using my fancy camera today, my 1080p camera, as I'm sure you can tell, because I look a little more clearly defined than on my laptop camera that I usually use. I am here in my new office. This is my first stream from my new office now that we are no longer in Airbnbs. We finally actually have a place to live. Thank you, God. Much appreciated. And so you're going to see more videos from this angle. Maybe someday I'll bring back the bike stream if there's enough desire for the bike stream. There's some lore to this video that we're about to do here. But first, I want to show off something. My first commissioned handmade icon. If you've read the book Saint of the Prisons that I have been shilling for many months, I had a handmade icon done of Saint, I'll call him a saint, Valeriu Gufențu from blessedmart.com. And they did a fantastic job. Look at that. Let's get some shine on that bad boy. Look at that. Look at that. That's called theosis right there. So if you want some great handmade icons, I cannot recommend blessedmart.com enough. They have a wide variety already available, and then that you can commission them. This is the only icon like this on the planet, handmade. You love to see that. So the lore of this video is as follows. J. Dyer, a name known amongst you all, rather, was going to debate an author named James Valiant about his book called Creating Christ, which promotes what's called the Roman provenance theory. We gonna talk about it. Believe you me, friends, we gonna talk about it a lot today. But Jay got very sick, and so he called me, I want to say it was 2 weeks ago, but my memory with time is not very good. It was either 1 week or 2 weeks ago. Might have been 1 week ago. And first of all, introduced me to Rockfin, asked if I would like to become part of it, which I did. I'm very grateful for. Thank you to those of you who are following me on Rockfin. I'll talk more about that at the end of this video. And he said, I'm supposed to debate this guy tomorrow, but I'm very sick. Do you want to debate him instead? I had never heard of him. It's not Jimmy Valiant, the pro wrestler. Trust me, that was my deepest hope and dream, but it was not him. It's just some random guy on the internet. So I looked into this guy. I thought, wow, this sounds really easy to debunk. Maybe not this week, but I will debate him later. So I started reading his book, Creating Christ, which I'm about 50% of the way through. I'm not going to finish it. I've suffered enough. Believe me, I've suffered enough. That is my asceticism, my martyrdom, reading this guy's book. You're going to hear a lot about that in a minute here. And so I started going through his book and taking a lot of notes for a debate that I was planning on doing with James Valiant in Jay Dyer's stead, given that he was sick. But I have a new priest since my wife and I moved, and I decided to ask because I would like to improve in obedience. I thought maybe I should ask my priest whether I should do this debate, whether I'm blessed to do a debate before I do it, right? I swore off debates after the Dr. Bob debacle, but this one I thought was going to be quick and easy. He told me, my priest that is, that his preference was that I just do my own video debunking this theory rather than do blood sports. He didn't use that phrase, but that's what it is. Blood sports type of heated internet debate. And so out of obedience, I turned down, this is my fourth priest, ball enthusiast. 2 in my first state, 2 in the second. Big fan of this priest. Great guy, love him. Just like I loved my second priest in San Diego too. So he expressed a preference for me to do my own debunking video. So I told the Lev, the guy who runs that Breaking the Rules channel that this debate was supposed to be on, that I was not going to do a debate because I was not blessed to do it. I don't remember if I told him it's because I wasn't blessed, but either way, I told him I wasn't going to do it. So some guy I've never heard of called Lambda stepped in and did this debate, I want to say a week ago, 5 days ago, with James Valiant, which you can find on the Breaking the Rules YouTube channel. But I, meanwhile, have all these notes, and I suffered through half this guy's book to debate him that I didn't get blessed to do. And so this live stream is going to be a combination of me reading through my debate notes, essentially, and interacting with you, my lovely audience. So it's going to be half scripted, half live, and that's how we are going to do this. So if you guys have any questions before I start on my scripted part, please let me know in the comments here. Okay, people are familiar with the Breaking the Rules channel. Yes, I've had 4 priests in 4 years. It's true. But if I ever sit down with you one-on-one and explain why, I think you will agree with the reason for why there were so many. One of the reasons is that I moved states, right? But I'm not going to get into all that airing dirty laundry and whatnot on camera. Jeremy asks, what is Roman provenance theory? Oh, we're about to find out. Those of you who are fans of my channel, thank you all, may have seen this commenter Jeremy Firth on my video From Joseph Smith to Jesus Christ, where he explained his journey from Mormonism to Orthodoxy and everything in between. Everything in between. Maybe I'll go on Breaking the Rules at some point. I mean, I have no problem going on talking to the guy. Half Russian, half Jewish, New Age. Interesting character. I'm just not going to do a debate. So I don't see many questions. I would prefer super chats to come at the end if you guys are going to give them, rather than in the middle, because if they show up in the middle and I'm on StreamYard, as you can tell by, there we go, the duck, it gives me like a timer for when I can click on it and see it. So without further ado, let's get in, and I'll check back the comments every once in a while as I'm reading through the script. This is not a separate video. This is me reading the script on this live stream. So here we go. The internet is a fascinating place. On the one hand, you find pagan wignats like Adam Green claiming that Christianity is a Jewish trick meant to subvert the Gentiles. On the other hand, you have James Valiant claiming that Christianity is actually a Gentile trick meant to subvert the Jews. Both sides speak with equal conviction in their desperate attempt to avoid the truth that the Son of God became a man, died, and was resurrected to grant us eternal salvation. Why is this? Why do these people throw their lives into these stupid theories? Why? Well, the answer is this: because the truth entails facing our sin and repenting from it and changing ourselves in our lives, right? And sometimes it's much easier to invent silly theories with no evidence, and we're going to get into that, believe me, to invent silly theories with no evidence than to look at ourselves in the mirror and realize how broken we truly are. In James Valiant's case, the theory is this: that Josephus, the Jewish traitor who ended up joining the Romans and wrote a bunch of fake history, that Josephus largely wrote the Gospels under the direction of the Flavian emperors in order to pacify Jewish rebels, get them to pay their taxes, and make them more submissive to Rome. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Roman provenance theory. We'll get to that more in a moment, but first we have to address the flagrant bias from which this stupid theory sprang. The introduction of James's book, Creating Christ, which, by the way, 2 thumbs down, describes the authorship of the New Testament books and letters as, quote, fiction, without providing even a single shred of evidence, betraying the emotional and vitriolic anti-Christian sentiment underlying his entire project. Now, said anti-Christian bias seeps through every page of his book. Most of the book, in fact, has nothing to do with Roman provenance theory at all. Instead, it's just him taking every pot shot he can think of at Christianity. Most of the book, at least the 50% that I read, is pointing out how such and such pagan deity had such and such similarity to Christ, and therefore Christ must not be real, right? Oh, Mithra was born on December 25th. The Christians just copied that, therefore Christianity is false. Now, if you saw that stupid Zeitgeist documentary 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you might recognize that because that's what that whole quote documentary was. Silly nonsense coming up with fake parallels that were instantly debunked by literally every single real religious scholar. Now, James's entire quote evidence for Roman providence theory is this. The line between satire and reality has been blurred by James Valiant. His theory, and the crux of his theory, is that early Christians often use a symbol of a dolphin with an anchor to identify themselves, and this symbol is also found on some pagan Roman coins. That's his evidence. Now, he himself says, and he brags about this in every interview he's done, as well as in his book, that he spent 30 years trying to prove Roman providence theory. And I think that tells you a lot about his agenda and academic honesty, or lack thereof, because it wasn't until he found these coins with the symbol on them that he felt his theory was fully validated. To me, the fact that he spent 30 years trying to prove a theory with no shred of evidence whatsoever to support it tells me this was never a search for truth. It was a conclusion in desperate search of support. He gives his own game away in the book's introduction, in which he whines about how terrible religion is in general. So first, let's dispel the fallacy he's working from, beyond the fact that every conclusion he reaches in the book is a non sequitur to begin with, meaning the conclusion he reaches does not logically lead from the quote argument before it. Let's keep in mind that back in the 4th century, St. Basil the Great wrote that all heretics fall into either one or both of the following errors. 1, the collapsing of nature and person into the same concept when they should be separate. And or 2, the word concept fallacy, by which a heretic will claim that a word can only ever have one specific meaning. You all saw that in my infamous Marty Leeds debate. And that anytime you see a specific word, regardless of context or intent or what the people saying it or writing it claim it means to them, it must always necessarily have that one same specific meaning. Now, James Valiant, in his book Creating Christ, falls into both of these errors. He falls into the first one with his constant references to Christianity being anathema to monotheistic religion. He keeps saying the Jews wouldn't have come up with this. They believed in monotheism, and Christianity is polytheistic. Now, why does he think Christianity is polytheistic, despite him claiming to have been raised Christian? Because, like St. Basil the Great pointed out, he fails to differentiate between the one nature and multiple persons of God. Both concepts in James's mind are collapsed into one, as these heretics have been doing for at least 1700 years. To James, multiple persons means multiple natures, making Christianity polytheistic in his mind. Now, it's interesting that these people have learned absolutely nothing in 1700 years of trying to debunk our faith and keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again, generation after generation. I'm going to turn my phone off real quick so I don't get a phone call in the middle of the stream. As to the second error described by St. Basil, James argues from the same word concept fallacy, but with a twist. Rather than insisting a word can have only one meaning, his theory presupposes that a particular image or symbol can only have one meaning, regardless of who is using it or what the people using it say that it means to them. His entire theory rests on what we might therefore call the image concept fallacy, and by clarifying what a particular symbol means, we can easily brush said theory into the dustbin of history with every other failed and heretical approach to Christianity. Now, again, the symbol he gets so excited about is a dolphin wrapped around an anchor. The symbol has a name and a history, which we'll get to in a minute, But first, let me illustrate why his obsession with it and the conclusion he thinks that it leads to is so stupid. Many cultures and times and places and people have used the same symbol throughout history. Let's use a symbol that we're probably all familiar with, the double-headed eagle. Now, the double-headed eagle was used by ancient Sumerians. That's the first recorded case we have of its use. It was used by the Paleologos family, which was the final royal family of the Byzantine Empire. It was used by the Russian imperials at some point, and it's used by the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. So if the same symbol is used by Scottish Rite of Freemasonry and the Byzantine Empire, in James's mind, that must mean that the Byzantine Empire created the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. This is the kind of illogical non sequitur that his entire book is built on, right? That mere suggestion is laughable, that the Byzantines created the Scottish Rite, but that's the same dynamic that he suggests with an equal amount of evidence, which is to say 0, as, quote, proof of his own theory. Furthermore, he constantly uses the phrase dolphin and anchor motif, rather than calling it by its name, Festina Lente. Now, that is a Latin phrase which means make haste slowly. We'll go over that in a second. Leaving the name of the symbol out of his big book about the symbol is a very odd thing to do. Unless, that is, he knew that by naming it in his book, people would look it up, and that when people looked more deeply into its origins, it would disprove his theory. So he didn't want his audience to know what it was. That's one possibility. He knows what it's called, kept it out of his book deliberately and intentionally to stop you from investigating. It's also theoretically possible that he conducted his 30 years of research so poorly and with such shocking ineptitude that he wrote half of a book at least about a particular symbol and never discovered what it was called. Whether this massive and glaring oversight was due to malice or simple incompetence, I really don't know. Now, this phrase, make haste slowly, has been used by many people and many cultures, and they've depicted the same phrase with different images. Regarding the Roman emperors, the Emperor Titus used a version of it which shows a dolphin and an anchor. Vespasian used the same phrase, the same sentiment, but his image was a crab and a butterfly. It has the same meaning, and we also see a hare in a snail shell used in different times and places. The first Roman emperor, Augustus, used several of these symbols to portray the sentiment of Festina Lente. In the modern world, we have a whole fable meant to express the sentiment of making haste slowly. Have you ever heard of the story of the tortoise and the hare? It teaches us that slow, steady progress often wins the race. It's not surprising to see many kings and other royalty throughout time using such imagery, as they denote wisdom, intentionality, and warn against the dangers of rash decision-making that can lead to a disaster. Hence, it's not a symbol of paganism or any particular ruler. It's a symbol of wisdom and successful leadership. James Valiant, in his book, insists that it's, quote, an exclusively pagan symbol representing different deities in various pantheons, Roman, Greek, etc., etc. Now, he claims that Christians used the Festina Lente symbol for 3 centuries, which is true, but he says that's before St. Constantine changed it to the cross. In fact, he constantly says the cross was not in use in the first several centuries, but he thinks that's because he didn't find archaeological evidence for it, like graveyards marked with it. But according to our saints and ancient bishops, the sign of the cross was taught to Christians by the apostles themselves, and they made that sign over their bodies and when giving various blessings. So the sign of the cross was certainly in use in the very beginning. And he would have known this had he bothered to study the topic in any depth, once again undermining his entire theory. Now, as to why the early Christians did sometimes use the Festina Lente symbol, if James had actually studied Christianity the way he claims to have done, he would know that the church adopts and baptizes things all the time. The hat that modern patriarchs wear, that big hat, for example, was borrowed and baptized from an Islamic head dressing. Is that proof that Christianity is secretly a Muslim hoax? Of course not. That's an absurd claim. Yet it's on precisely the same level of absurdity as the claim we've heard today. Thank you for the super chat, David. I'll read this and then get back to my script. It says, Brother Augustine, glad to see you. Have you heard of the interpretation of the suffering servant in Isaiah as the Jewish people? Jews for Judaism did a YouTube episode making that claim. Yes, I have. I've mentioned that before, and I'm going to talk about that more in my Prophets series on Rockfin. But I don't want to get too far off track for the time being. If any of you have super chats, please do save them for the end so we can continue through this scripted narrative and we can debunk Roman providence theory once and for all. Now, why did Christians use the fish and anchor? It's possible they used it because using the cross would identify them as Christians and lead to their persecution and death. Also, Christ often used concepts familiar to his audience and infused them with new meaning, as he did with both the Israelite and pagan worldviews, right? Logos, appealing to pagans, fulfilling the Old Testament, appeal to Jews. He took what people were prepared to accept and understand, and then explained to them how he fulfilled all things. The Roman Empire, since the time of Augustus, had been using Festina Lente. Everyone would have seen it or known what it was. Just as Hebrew theology and Greek philosophy were fulfilled, completed, and infused with new meaning by the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, so symbols which existed before his ministry could be reappropriated and given new meaning. Valiant claims in his book that even though the early Christians explicitly wrote about what the symbol meant to them, it was still secretly just proof of the faith's, quote, pagan origins. He knows better than the people that were there at the time. So when you really think about what he's proposing, it's this, that Rome invented a fake religion meant to pacify rebellious Jews and get them to pay their taxes, but then immediately made the religion illegal to practice and slaughtered the people who believed in it. Tell me, if you went to all the trouble to invent an entire theology and religious way of life, complete with fake authors writing about fake miracles, and you went to all this effort just to help yourself, would you make it legal or illegal for people to practice? Would you persecute and kill the followers of the religion that you just invented so that its followers would help you in the first place? Of course not, because that's stupid. Now, Valiant, clever little deceiver that he thinks himself to be, realized when he was writing this book, coming up with this theory, that the Roman persecution of Christians undermined the entire thing. So what did he do? Did he realize it was dumb and go back to reality? Well, of course he didn't. He has an agenda to promote, and so he fabricated an entirely new version of history to support it. What I'm about to say supports what I said earlier, that Valiant is blurring the line between satire and reality. He explains away persecution of Christians by asserting, again with literally zero evidence, that when ancient Roman historians spoke of persecuting Christians, they were actually just confused and meant that they were persecuting militant Jewish zealots. Not Christians, just Jewish rebels that the Romans accidentally referred to as Christians. Voila, they're Christians now. There is, of course, no proof of this assertion whatsoever, which is why Valiant presents none to his audience. Doesn't exist. Made it up. It's an invented historical fable meant to justify his initial claim, which, like said initial claim, warps history to support itself rather than going where the evidence leads. Valiant even uses this completely fabricated history to accuse these Jewish Christians, as he dishonestly takes to calling them, of rebelling against Rome under Simon Bar Kokhba. He simply takes the name of Christ, and since the Jews who rejected the real Christ were still looking for an anointed Messiah, or a Christ, Valiant simply says, well, since they're looking for a Messiah, they're Christians too. Wow, look at that. He applies the name of Christians to the Jews that rejected Christ. Now they're Christians, and now Rome's persecutions mean something entirely different, right? He just invents this story as he goes, and for some reason thinks that this is worth taking seriously. His outright dishonesty regarding early Christian persecution and martyrdom is, of course, far from the only problem with James Valiant's Roman providence theory as described in his awful book. He did an interview on the channel NETIV in which he correctly stated that Christianity represented a massive change from Judaism, specifically in that St. Paul did away with circumcision, kosher dietary laws, and things of that nature. That leads the thinking man to wonder, if the Roman strategy was to create a religion that would appeal to the Jews, why would they do it in such a way that was massively offensive to them and their religion? Or in St. Paul's words, a stumbling block to the Jews? Wouldn't it make more sense to create a religion that didn't require them to turn their backs on millennia-old traditions that were considered very sacred and holy to the Jewish people at the time? Further, in that same interview, Valiant described Jesus as a, quote, semi-divine savior that Jews would never have believed in. But Christianity does not teach that Jesus is semi-divine, as if he were half divine and half human. He calls Jesus semi-divine to compare him to all these other pagan deities in his little zeitgeist theory, right? Christianity teaches that Jesus was and is fully God and fully man. Again, not half of each, but 100% both. Nothing in the pagan world ever approached anything close to this. But again, he hasn't actually studied anything. If his 30 years of research led him to not even understand the basics of Christian theology, why should we be expected to take any of his other, quote, research seriously? Why should we believe that he studied anything else relevant to this topic in more depth than he studied the very basics of what he claimed to be an expert on? Should someone unfamiliar with the very fundamentals of a religion really be considered an expert on its origins? Furthermore, he described this, in his words, man-God notion as a, quote, totally pagan thing and, quote, totally non-monotheistic. Again, this mistake is the first of the two St. Basil described in the 4th century. Any Christian would tell you we're absolutely monotheists. James claims to have been raised in a Christian home and taken the faith very seriously in his youth. So again, I ask, how did he manage to miss all the basics? He has no relevant degrees. He hasn't been to seminary. He doesn't appear to have read even a single book about Christian theology. Given how often and how proudly he talks about his 30 years of research, we have to ask whether any amount of research matters if it's done this poorly. And ironically, he's not overly familiar with Second Temple Judaism's theology either. After all, many Second Temple Jews, who were monotheists like Christians are, believed in multiple persons or hypostases of the one God they believed in. Again, one nature, multiple persons. Father Stephen DeYoung explores this topic in great depth and great detail in his book, The Religion of the Apostles. So it sounds to me, from reading this book and listening to his interviews, as if James skipped over the entire history and theology of, frankly, all relevant topics. Ignorance is the very foundation of his claims, and hence his entire house of cards is built on sand. Further questions for James in this theory. He claimed, correctly, that the Gospels sweep aside Jewish exceptionalism. So I ask, what kind of moron would create a religion meant to appeal to a group of people by removing their sense of being special and chosen by the creator of the universe? If you were to fabricate a religion for someone to try and pacify them, get them on your team, why would you insult them like that? That strikes me as a particularly stupid strategy. And we see right there in the Gospels that the overwhelming majority of Jews rejected the Christian message. So if the Romans created a fake religion meant to appeal to Jews, it seems they not only failed, but failed about as badly as any plan could fail. Question number 2. If Christianity were a trick to make Jews, quote, pro-Roman, why did Jesus and the apostles teach them not to sacrifice to false gods? If they wanted the Jews to assimilate into the Roman cultural milieu, wouldn't they have taught them to worship the Roman pantheon rather than refuse to do so up to the point of torture and execution? Another question. Can he provide one shred of evidence, for example, one single letter, one single document of any kind from any point in the pre-Christian Roman Empire, of a Roman pagan trying to convince Jews to become Christians? Where are all the Roman emperors trying to foist Christianity upon Jews? Can he show me one single example of correspondence between Roman leaders encouraging each other to do this, or celebrating the fact that Christianity finally solved the problem of Jewish rebellion? The answer, of course, is that he can't, because that doesn't exist, because Roman providence theory is absurd. Last question here. If it were only a big trick to suppress the Jews, why did Jesus quickly give up on preaching only to the Jews, as he said at first, who almost universally didn't believe in him, and instead preach to the Gentiles too? Why would the apostles go around preaching the gospel to Gentiles? Why would so many of the apostolic letters be about preaching to Gentiles if they were secretly written by Josephus, meant to be a big trick against the Jews? Of course, these questions are never addressed. My final question is this. there's a subsect of Jews in the New Testament who say the phrase, quote, "We have no king but Caesar." In the Gospels, in the New Testament as a whole, are those people who say they have no king but Caesar portrayed as heroes or villains? Obviously, they're the villains of the story. So did the Roman emperors create a group of villains that worship the Roman emperor? None of this makes sense because James's mind is mush. Total mush. Here's my very, very, very favorite part of his book. He writes, quote, "Readers will see at every turn Christ's own story seems to have been shaped by the Roman political agenda at the time. Just how much of the New Testament comprises such pro-Roman propaganda? It soon became obvious while searching for an exception to the startlingly pro-Roman attitude in the New Testament that there is no exception anywhere to be found." Then, in the Kindle version, there's a little clickable footnote that I assume most people will blow past. But if you click on the footnote, it says, "Except for James and the book of Revelation." So he himself knew when he wrote the sentence, "There is no exception anywhere to be found," that there were exceptions all over the place. For example, Rome being called the great whore of Babylon, right? The tip of the spear of the evil Antichrist beast system. He deliberately hid that in a little clickable footnote. I don't know in paperback whether there's a footnote there at all, whether it's at the bottom of the page, whether you have to go to the back to find it. He wrote that sentence, "No exception anywhere to be found," a very emotionally charged, dogmatic sentence, knowing full well he was lying to the reader and hoping they wouldn't check the footnotes or had no familiarity with the New Testament whatsoever. Interesting. Guy is a liar, on top of being dumb. To conclude, James Valiant's book, Creating Christ, and the Roman Provenance theory it promotes are wildly incoherent, poorly thought out, and very transparent cases of confirmation bias. In other words, there is no possible way to honestly examine the evidence, think critically about each factor involved, and conclude that Roman Provenance theory holds any water. The only possible way to arrive at such a conclusion, as I've demonstrated today, is to begin from the conclusion that Christianity must not be what it appears to be, and then selectively cherry pick from the historical record while fabricating stories, fabricating evidence, lying to the audience, and inventing patterns that no religious scholar takes seriously or considers valid. Even big atheist, quote, scholars think this theory is stupid. It's nothing but emotional propaganda against God and religion, veiled in the language of serious scholarship and research. Drops the mic, walks away. Roman Providence theory, may it lie dead in the grave forevermore. Raymond Dunn, a very interesting comment just here that I didn't think of when I was writing out my script, my debate script. When Christ says, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's," it's a denial of the divinity of Caesar, which was something Roman emperors promoted. They promoted apotheosis for their emperors, that they became gods. So by denying the divinity of Caesar, another example, great example, Raymond, thank you for that. Another example of Jesus not being pro-Roman propaganda, but saying something that portrays their worldview as the bad guys. So for some reason, people are taking this James Valiant character and putting him on the debate circuit, the interview circuit, and acting like this is serious, mind-blowing research that no one's ever thought of before, man. Now, I learned very on, as a catechumen, I want to say, into Orthodoxy, that if you come up with a theory about Christianity that no one's ever thought of before, you're wrong and probably dumb, right? You read through the Fathers, 2,000 years of saints, everything has been thought of and either debunked or supported. You're not going to come up with something new that holds any water whatsoever. So thank you all for listening. Now we will move on to the live stream version of this live stream. Wow, lots of comments. Thank you, everybody. Let me scroll to the top. We had 96 people watching when I checked a minute ago. Love to see it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Okay. Thank you to my mod Exposing Powerful Lies for promoting my Odyssey channel. Even though Odyssey just mirrors my YouTube stuff, the really serious scripted stuff that I do is on Rockfin now for the premium subscribers over there. Stuff that I actually write out the entire video. And we're doing one of those tomorrow. We'll talk more about that soon. Let's see, where did... No, you don't need to get on Rockfin to watch my content. It's only very specific content will be behind that premium paywall. The book reviews, the interviews, random live streams, stuff like this, all this is still going to be on YouTube. It's just the stuff that I actually have to sit down and spend like 10 hours per video reading through all this stuff and scripting everything. That's the only stuff out there. The vast majority of my stuff is still going to be right here on YouTube. Setup looking fly. Thank you. It's probably the 1080p camera and all this. Nope, other side. Cool musical equipment over here. I've showed you guys this before. My old from my old house, my icon of Saint Nectarios of Aegina. And I'll show you again. It's always a good time to show off your icon collection, right? In 1080p this time. Boom. After my wife, who at the time was either my girlfriend or my fiance, I don't remember exactly. I think fiance by then. After we watched Man of God, when this a movie about Saint Nectarios was playing at the Greek Film Festival, we saw it on our computer as it was being streamed. I thought, wow, this guy is an amazing saint, and I need to get an icon and have him pray for me, venerate him in his wisdom. Right. Jeremy says, it sounds like a lot of work for the Romans. Why not just torture and kill the rebellious Jews, which they did, of course, wherever they could. David, thank you for the super chat. Didn't you know Christianity was a Roman psyop, bro? That's right. We have all these goofballs on the internet. It's a Gentile psyop against the Jews. No, it's a Jewish psyop against the Gentiles. Maybe it just is what it purports itself to be. But that's the hardest thing of all, right? The hardest truth to accept in the world is that Christianity is true. Why? It means that you're broken. And we live in an age and a culture, or at least we did before everyone started getting brownie points for being like disabled or trannies or whatever. We used to live in a culture when I was growing up of like self-help, right? Self-esteem, affirmations. I'm great. I'm whole. I'm healed. I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm powerful. I'm successful. Well, Christianity is anathema to this worldly spirit of self-improvement, right? It says, you are not whole. You are not healed. You are not powerful. You're not successful, spiritually at least. You're a broken, sinful man or woman that needs someone else to save you. That's anathema to the American self-help culture. It's very hard to accept. But then once you do, this is the narrow path, right, that leads to salvation, not the wide road that leads to destruction. Once you do accept it, if you live it out genuinely and zealously and earnestly, then you do become healed and whole over time, right? The grand paradox of Christianity. By admitting your brokenness, you become whole. I'm going to refill my water. I'll BRB. Enjoy this nice view of my studio here. Now, this is why the Orthodox always say, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. We admit our brokenness because that's what leads to being whole. You don't get whole by tricking yourself into it. You can't affirm yourself out of your maladies and your afflictions. Only Christ can do that, right? Only God can heal you. You can't do anything yourself, except get yourself in deeper trouble. Raymond says, wow, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, the Roman providence theory. It's certainly up there. It's possible that James is just trolling everyone and made up this history of 30 years of research and is just trying to play a character and get away with something. It's possible, right? It's possible. But he seems pretty genuine about it and very smug. So I think he thinks he came onto something serious, even though his own book disproves his theory in that little footnote, right? Oh, except for all this stuff that makes Rome out to be evil. Except for that, no exception anywhere to be found. Theosis Pilgrim, thank you for the super chat, good sir. How can he say scripture is pro-Roman when St. Paul in 1 Corinthians states that the gods of the pagans are demons? Because he's not serious. That's how. Because he's not paying attention, doesn't know what he's talking about, and is deliberately lying to people. There's no way around it. That last little favorite part I read, no exception anywhere except for this little footnote, means he is lying knowingly to people. Totally based shirt. Thank you, sir. We'll be snagging one. Me and my friends briefly talked about starting up a shop like this that's Orthodox instead of the Catholic one I got this from. I don't know what happened to that. I'll have to talk to my buddy again who can do graphic design. These are pretty sweet shirts. Saint Wave, they're called, if you want one. Saint Wave. Zeitgeist level theology, yes. Yeah, Adam Green, the guy I mentioned in the very beginning, the guy from No More News, believes Jesus was a Jewish creation to end paganism. That's right. Creator of this theory debated E. Michael Jones and displayed total lack of knowledge, of course, regarding the basics of Christianity. Adam Green also debated Miles Pollan on the Kill Stream and demonstrated that he doesn't even know what an argument is. He just kept asserting his point of view as if that's proof, right? If you say something emotionally enough, dogmatically enough, it must be true, right? Or I wouldn't have this level of conviction. That's not reality. That's nonsense. Thank you for the super chat again. No, different guy. Alfred of Arizona. Thank you, sir. Hey, Brother Augustine, just want to thank you for all the great work you've been doing. My pleasure. I really get a kick out of doing this too, right? The purpose of this ministry, to educate, entertain, and edify the world from an Orthodox Christian perspective. I have a lot of fun doing this. I'm glad to hear you're having fun too. Thank you as well for boosting my Telegram. Oh, you're that guy, Western Orthodox History. As much as I have boosted it, it's blown up. Amazing. If you guys are Orthodox, you have Telegram, please check out the channel Western Orthodox History. It goes over the 1,000 years of Orthodox history that you almost never hear about in an Eastern Rite church, which is to say 99% of them, at least in America. Guys, the West has amazing saints. St. Augustine of Hippo, my patron saint. St. Alfred the Great, my single favorite purely human leader in the history of time. There's a great book about King Alfred called The White Horse King by Benjamin Merkel. That is the best biography I've ever read because it's written like a novel, but it's true. It's a real biography of King Alfred. The White Horse King, Benjamin Merkel. Fantastic book. He says, I love Theopoetica. Thank you. Thank you. Theopoetica, for those of you who don't know, is a book of mine about classical Christian poetry. It has 20 poems that I wrote, essays on each of those poems explaining the craft of it, the thought behind it, and then essays in the back on the topic of poetry as a whole. He says, loved Theopoetica. Will there be a sequel? I don't know if I'm going to go back to poetry, but I have other creative projects, as I can no longer hide, in the works, things that are gearing up, and I'm putting pieces in place for other creative expressions of my love for God and the Orthodox Church. So stay tuned. I hope and pray, and please pray for me in my projects, that some cool things will be coming to fruition this year. And then really for every year for the rest of my life, I would love to just devote all my time and energy to creative Christian projects, right? I still have a full-time day job for the time being. But the more you guys help out, the more Rockfin subscribers I have. If I can replace my day job income with doing this, I'm out of the day job world, full-time evangelist, apologist, creative promoter of the truth of the Orthodox Church. I would love to do that full-time, but I got bills to pay and a wife to take care of. As a single guy, I could get away with working a lot less, right? I was technically living in poverty in California, but I had everything I needed and no debt. So does it matter for a single guy, a bachelor, to be living on like 25 grand a year? Not really, at least income-wise, right, from my job. Didn't really matter. I had everything I needed and wanted. I was a very happy guy. Now I got more bills to pay, so I got to go back to work. I can't spend quite as much time on this stuff as I would like. But just so you all know, it is a goal of mine, a vision of mine, to someday be able to do all of this stuff full-time. This is much more fun than working for someone else. Plus, I get to spread the truth and bring people to the church. You love to see it. Oh, thank you. Exposing Powerful Lies is saying, please consider subscribing to Brother Augustine's Gumroad. So that website you see on the screen is where you can find my speeches from the last two speaking events, the Orthodox speaking events, Trad Forum in Indiana and Montanica in Montana, as well as finding the audio version of Theopoetica is also on there. And talks have begun, ladies and gentlemen, about Montanica 2, which I think, to stick with the Metallica theme, should be called Montanica 2, Save 'Em All. I suggested that to Father Deacon Ananias. He said, LOL. And I was like, I ain't kidding. Montanica 2, Save 'Em All. Sounds awesome to me. So we'll see if that gets done. So if you want to hear either of my speeches or the audio version of Theopoetica, personally, I think if you're going to read my book about poetry, you should go with the audio version, because then you get to hear it the way that it sounded in my head as I was writing it. When you're doing classical poetry with actual meter and actual structure and actual emphasis on different syllables, hearing it in the poet's voice makes a big difference, in my humble opinion. I'm glad people are enjoying Theopoetica. A 5 o'clock shadow head. You know what's unfortunate? I shaved my head last night. This is how fast my hair grows. It just comes back very rapidly. This is great. Thank you, Alexandra. Glad people are enjoying it. Yeah. Raymond killing it with the comments today. Not hard to know exactly what Christians believe. The creed is public knowledge. Right. James Valiant, 30 years, missed the Nicene Creed. Minor detail. Minor detail. Thank you, Exposing Powerful Lies, for shilling all of my various channels. Rockfin is where we're doing the Christ and the Minor Prophets series. Last week's video was an introduction to the series, about 14 minutes long, explaining the context and paradigm of the minor prophets. Who are they? Do they matter? If so, why do they matter? Why are we talking about them? Tomorrow, we'll go up the first big video in that series, Christ and the Minor Prophets, only on Rockfin, where we will go through the book of Obadiah, the minor prophet saint Obadiah, who has icons and the feast day in the church. You've probably never seen him or heard of it. Really important, really amazing stuff. It's going to be a great video. I'm very excited to record it and publish it tomorrow. If you are at all curious about how Christ is present in the 12 minor prophets of the Old Testament, subscribe to me on Rockfin. That is the only place this series is going to be for now. I might put it on Patreon also later for the same price, of course. I'm not trying to make anyone pay less or more than anyone else. Trying to figure out if that's feasible, but for now, exclusively on Rockfin. Thank you, Exposing Powerful Lies. Is this the Roman invented Jesus theory? Yes, that is what it was. Thank you, ball enthusiasts, for the super chat. This is my petition for full-time Brother Augustine. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Really, really appreciate all of your generosity and charity, everybody. Love your content. You've helped me enormously. Thank God. May God bless you and your wife. Thank you. We moved 3 times in 4 months from San Diego to a new state, to an Airbnb, then to another Airbnb a month later, and now finally to a house 2 months after that. This is our first semi-permanent, who knows, we'll be here for super long term. First, at least mostly permanent place. Needs more decorating and stuff. We need a box spring for a mattress. You can see my humidifier. Man, it's hard to point at stuff with the camera on. Humidifier / essential oils thing. My little travel guitar. You guys have seen me play this on stream before. On my first Utah stream, I believe I did. I had my little, what's it called? Driver's cap on. I was playing that thing. Microphone stuff over here. Good times. We have been very blessed. We finally have a spot. I can put all my stuff out here. You'll have to see it. Do you think I should read my book aloud on my YouTube channel? If people are interested, then sure. Sure. Brain dead non sequiturs. Exactly. That's all it is. A hair in a snail shell. Ah, yes. This must have been the part of the talk about Festina Lente. Quite a nice symbol. Isn't it cool? Make haste slowly. If you make rash decisions and rush through things, you end up losing in the long run. Why would anyone not like this idea? The dolphin and the anchor. Okay, back to this first super chat from David Franco. So Isaiah 53, which is about the suffering servant in the Old Testament, is all about, obviously, Jesus. Even my brother, one of my little brothers, who's not a Christian, when I read Isaiah 53 to him, I said, who's this about? He said, well, Jesus, obviously. Smart kid. Smart kid. Hope he keeps going with it. For a while, Jews were trying to make it not about Christ by saying Isaiah 53 is about the Jewish people as a whole, the nation of Israel spread across the diaspora. We're all the suffering servant. But even that did not gain very much traction. So eventually, as far as I understand, they just stopped talking about it. They just don't read it in synagogues anymore, from what I'm told. From what I'm told. Yes, anchor was also a very common symbol of Christianity from the beginning. It was a Jewish symbol. It was on the Jewish coins beforehand, right? So here we have James Valiant saying, oh, it's exclusively a pagan symbol, but also admits in his book that Jews were using it beforehand. So he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth, lying all the while. Yeah, the Jewish people as a whole have always argued messianic prophecies are about them as a people group, but it's a terrible argument, doesn't hold up under any scrutiny. Absolutely, absolutely true. Oh, this is very cool. Composer named Arvo Part wrote Festina Lente for strings and harp, where some instruments play the melody in half speed, other instruments play it at double speed. Very cool. I might have to listen to that, actually. Who's texting me? Oh. Deal with that later. Old landlord. That sounds cool. I'm going to have to check that out. Thank you, Jeremy. Debunked. Debunked. Absolutely. Lord have mercy, what's being debunked? Roman provenance theory is what was debunked today. Also, from what I'm told, Valiant kind of stole this whole theory from a guy named Joseph Atwill, who wrote a book called Caesar's Messiah back in the day. He claimed he started his 30 years of research before Atwill's book. I haven't read Atwill's book. I have no interest in Roman providence theory beyond debunking it into oblivion. But apparently he kind of stole it anyway. Or at least his book came out after another book about the topic. Over 100 people. Love to see it. Thank you all for spending your precious time with me here today. I'm glad that this is how you're spending your time and not watching rap videos. I almost called it a music video, but rap is not music. I don't always agree with Ben Shapiro, but when I do, it's on the fact that rap is not music because it has no melody. Ben Shapiro says music is rhythm and melody. Rap has no melody, therefore it's not music. I don't see a flaw with that argument. It's just like a tribal beat. You can call it a beat, but when every instrument is percussive and there's no melody, it's just not music. It's just not. Oh, this is a good comment. A good sign of a dishonest actor is attributing both supernatural competency and slapstick level incompetency to the same organization. Totally ad hoc. Yeah, James Valiant is not acting in good faith. He's always got that smug smile on his face, like guffawing at people who don't understand how smart he is. But he's just lying. Will there be more cool streams happening today? I'm going to work soon, so not from me. But again, there will be the next video in the Christ and the Minor Prophets series going up tomorrow on Rockfin. All the goofy weirdos online call Christianity a Jewish religious trick, a desert cult. That's kind of a cool band name, Desert Cult, or a European creation, schizo. Oh, thank you for the compliment. Thank God. This is Mike Tyson versus an armless child. To be fair, even if the child had arms, I feel like Mike Tyson would probably win that fight. Right? Just going with the odds. Even though he just kind of sits around smoking weed these days, I bet he could still damage a child with arms. I don't know if you guys saw his fight with Roy Jones Jr. I didn't enjoy it. We took two of the greatest boxers of all time, put them together, and it's like two guys fighting over a biscuit in a nursing home. It was like when Chuck Liddell fought Tito Ortiz when they're already like in their 50s. Really sad. I think it was their third fight together. Like, do your thing, hit your peak, have your career, and know when it's time to retire. I feel like that's important, especially in something like fighting, where your life is on the line every time you step in there, right? A guy died in bare knuckle boxing last year. He just got knocked out. He careened forward, his head smashed on the canvas, his neck telescoped, and the guy died. Every time you step in there, you're risking your life. You got to know when to quit. I'm sure it's hard for people that have devoted their whole lives to this, to this sport, but you got to know when your body can't take it anymore and when you just can't perform, right? Retire with dignity. Retire with dignity. Don't let your legacy be ruined by trying to keep it going longer than it should go. I feel the same way for musicians. If you've already said everything you've had to say, just stop. Let your catalog be glorious. Don't keep doing stuff. The Offspring, perfect example. When I was growing up, I loved The Offspring. The first CD I ever bought was Americana by The Offspring in 7th grade. I really liked their stuff. Smash, Splinter, Nitro, Americana, Conspiracy of One had some great songs. And their last few albums are just, they're phoning it in. It's ruining my memory of The Offspring. Please, guys, please, hang it up. Do something else. Start a podcast, write a book. You're creative, guys. You don't only have to do music. Anyway, now that we're past Mike Tyson and The Offspring, Reagan Lodge is here, everybody. He is working hard on a graphic novel that I hope you will all buy and give good reviews when it comes out. Reagan was my very first interview on this channel, called Reagan Lodge and the Nazi Sex Dungeon Cult. Very first interview ever on this channel. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Really interesting guy, interesting history, a lot of healing, Orthodox graphic artist now. Love to see it. Okay, here I think is where I started reading the earlier comments. Yeah, I didn't know Christianity was a Roman psyop, bro. Totally. St. Nectarios, the patron saint of Euphrosyne's parish. Love to see it. Love to see it. Oh, it's playing in theaters on March 1st, the Man of God movie? No way. That's amazing. If you haven't seen Man of God, can't recommend it enough. Really, really good. Someone's going to jump out from under the covers, isn't it? That's where I keep the bodies of all the heretics I've debunked. That's what the essential oils thing is for, to get rid of the smell of rotting heretic corpse. Heretic Corpse does sound like a death metal band. Hey, Norwegian News, Father Deacon Ananias is here. Says, my class and I say hello. Hello to you and your class. See, when he doesn't feel like teaching, he can just turn on a live stream and just sit back and relax and still get paid for being a professor. Good move. Good move. That's a pro gamer move. Oh, he really is watching me from his philosophy class. Hello, everybody. I hope to see you all at Montanica 2. Save them all. Yes, Father Deacon, that's how I'm going to be promoting it. Adam Green wanted to debate Father Deacon Ananias. I'm sure that would be amusing. Green's site should be called Moron News. Adam Green, the problem is he doesn't know what a debate is. I spoke to him very briefly on the Kill Stream. I don't know if you guys were there for that, on Ethan Ralph's show. I don't follow the Kill Stream. I don't care about it or anything really in that alt-right blood sports thing. I just don't care. But I called him one time because Michael Sisko gave me the number and said, hey, you should call in and talk to Adam Green. I was like, okay. It was probably 1 a.m. or something. It was late. I remember it was late. Called in, briefly talked to him. We had a polite enough conversation, but I also realized through the course of that little brief dialogue that he was just trying to do like neener, gotcha stuff. Like, he's not serious. He doesn't really want to know the truth of Christianity and all that stuff. And again, his debate with Miles Poland on the Kill Stream just made it so obvious that he doesn't know what a debate is. He doesn't know how to formulate an argument. So Adam Green versus the Norwegian News, Father Deacon Ananias Sorum, the one and only, would probably be entertaining, kind of like Father Deacon's debate with Matt Slick was entertaining and also infuriating. But I'm not sure it would be much deeper than that debate was, right? Where Father Deacon just said, okay, justify your presupposition in the Bible's authority, and Matt Slick spent the next 2 hours failing to understand what the question meant, right? I'm tempted to say they're not sending their best, but the sad reality, guys, they are sending their best. Jay had a great stream last week where he talked about how there's no one left to debate. All the great intellectuals of the heretics have fallen. They've sent their best, and they've universally been debunked. They've been debunked for a long time. And this new generation of liars and heretics and dummies is being debunked just like St. Irenaeus did in the 2nd century. They sent their best, and their best failed. Orthodoxy for the win. All day, every day, baby. All day, every day. Getting closer to baptism. Please pray for me. So you, commenter, Merzik3 is getting closer to baptism. This is when you should expect a ton of spiritual assaults. The devil can't see your heart the way God can, but he can see your outer behavior and hear the things you say. He's like a camera, right? He can see and hear everything that's on the outside, but he can't see through you, the truth of who you are. But when he sees you going to a church, talking to a priest, signing up for baptism, he will then turn up the volume on the demonic warfare against you to try and scare you away from it or tell you you're not good enough, it's too hard, blah, 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 whatever the excuse may be, this is the time to expect it whenever you approach a sacrament. Everyone, please pray for Merzik 3. May God protect him on his journey to baptism. Amen. We need more Christ-loving musicians. Totally agree. We've talked about Christian rock a lot on this channel. There's not enough good Orthodox rock. But there's a lot of Protestant rock that's, it's a lot better than the secular stuff. Jeremy says his favorite Western saint is St. Peter the Aleut. Love to see it. T-shirt again is from Saint Wave. It's a Catholic store on Etsy or eBay or something. I think you can get them both places. Montanica 2. That's right. We had, we did it in Father Deacon's philosophy room where he teaches as a professor out there at Carroll College. I gave a speech. Father Deacon gave a speech. David Patrick Carey gave a speech. And Jay Dyer gave a speech. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. I think it was just the four of us, right? Amazing, successful event. We had at least 70 people, if I remember correctly, 70 tickets sold in that room. There's a lot of adventures people went on around Helena, around Montana. I was in the hotel writing my speech while everyone else was going on boat rides and stuff. But it would be great to have an even bigger turnout for Montanica 2. That room can certainly hold more than 70 people. For those of you who have to travel, it's going to be worth it. The last one was certainly worth it. There were people that drove 14 hours, I want to say from Tennessee, if I remember the group correctly, to get to Montanica. And there were 5 Jewish converts to Orthodoxy in that room. 5. I hope to see 10 next year. They're rookie numbers, 5. We got to raise those numbers up. Got to raise them up. Is debunking dispensationalism worth it? Chase says, I don't even know what it really is, but I've seen lots of Protestants talking about it lately on social media. Dispensationalism is the idea that time is separated into different dispensations, which are marked by a change in God's interaction with humanity. I don't know what the fathers said about that enough to comment on it. I don't know if they stole that from the fathers and twisted it, or if they came up with it themselves, the Protestants. I'm going to plead the fifth, as is usually the wisest thing to do. A wise man once said nothing, right? Montanica 2, Ride the Light. Ride the Light's not bad. Maybe we'll do Ride the Light and save them all for Montanica 2 and 3. Father Deacon, are you listening? I'm going to send you all these suggestions. I'm going to text them to you later. Always enjoy my live streams. Thank you so much. Thank God. So many comments. Thank you, guys. We had 110, I want to say, people watching at the peak so far. 100 on right now. Amazing. Tyson was pulling his punches, someone says, in the Roy Jones Jr. fight. I don't know. I suspect he was, because it was an exhibition fight. Because if you watched his training videos before the Roy Jones Jr. fight, he looked like a beast. I mean, he was punching hard. He didn't do it at all in the fight. You might be right that he was pulling punches. Maybe it's like, hey, you guys are old. We want to milk this cash cow with these little exhibition fights. Try not to kill each other. Maybe it was something like that. That's not what I wanted to watch. I wanted to watch 2 world champions duke it out, man. I really did. So we have a guy saying that the band Polyphia makes very technical music inspired by rap beats. Okay, they do make it inspired by rap beats, and Tim Henson doesn't even listen to guitar music. He said he only listens to rap. But frankly, he's a phenomenally talented guitarist, obviously, Tim Henson. One of the best in terms of pure technical skill, timing. The guy's mind is a metronome. But every song is exactly the same, and it has no soul to it, in my humble opinion. As someone who enjoys melodic guitar work, melodic solos, not just shredding, not just cool beats, bro. Like, I want to hear a David Gilmour solo, Glenn Tipton solo, right? Really good stuff. I've been putting some of my own guitar solo practice up on Instagram, if you guys are curious. Instagram.com/Brother Augustine. I put up, I played the solo from the song Alone by Heart. Great song, great band. And I'll Be Over You by Toto. Someone recommended, hey, you should learn this Lukather solo from the Toto song, I'll Be Over You. Those are both up on Instagram right now with the guitar that is the top top one here. You know what I should have done? I'm now realizing I should have put one of my real guitars on that stand instead of the travel guitar. That would look cool in the background. I'm going to do that next time. Polyphia is inspired by rap, but they still have melody. So it's not itself rap, you know? Tarantino said after his 10th film, he'll retire from filmmaking. Maybe should have done it after the 7th or 8th. I thought his last movie was awful. I mean, most of his stuff is just like violence porn, gore porn. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was, I'm going to say, the worst movie I've ever seen in theaters, besides maybe Baby Driver that I just walked out of. I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with a bunch of my ortho bros out in San Diego. An hour and a half into the movie, I Googled, does this movie have a plot? After 3 hours were done, I knew the answer. Not really. Nope. Thank you, Marco. Super chat and comment. God be with you, Brother Augustine. Praying for you from California. Thank you, sir. You are on my prayer list as well. I hope you're doing well. Debate Obama. He's a very skilled speaker, Obama. He's great with rhetoric. Excuse me. He is a very proficient NLP practitioner. Much better than the bumbling moron in office now is. So you say professional actors are all degenerate. However, Mick Rooney, I think is his name, right? No, Mickey Rourke was in Man of God about St. Nectarios, the wonder worker. Granted, he had like a 30-second cameo at the end, but hey, he was still in it. Rat Splattigan says, love your zeal for your ministry, Brother Augustine. Thank you, sir. Any good that you see from me is purely from God. Believe me. I know what I'm capable of without him, and it's ugly and it's dark. Thoughts on Nick Fuentes? I support some of what he says and does, and I don't support other things he says and does. This weird thing he's doing lately. I mean, I don't follow Nick Fuentes. I just hear about him from other people. He's like on this thing now, trying to make being an incel into a virtue or something. Very like anti-woman, anti-sex, even within marriage. Just like, it's stupid. It's stupid. I don't know how seriously he takes his faith. But I have to give him credit for starting a movement that has changed the political discourse in this country. How many Republicans nowadays, including Charlie Kirk, are using the phrase America First that they stole from Nick Fuentes while excluding him from their circle and from their platform and their events? They're all doing it. Every new Republican on Gab, most of whom I assume are grifting, say, hi, I'm an America First conservative. Okay, well, you all got that from Nick. Give the man credit. Why do you speak ill of him while stealing from him? It's a sign of a poor character, I think. Montanica 2.1, director's cut. Polyphia is a very unique band. I'll certainly grant them that. I just don't like it. I like the song that they do. Like, it's kind of like AC/DC. Like, they do one thing and it sounds pretty good, right? Except I think AC/DC is better than Polyphia. And the second best-selling rock band of all time. Do you guys know the #1 best-selling rock album in history? Without Googling it, do any of you know? It's Thriller by Michael Jackson. #2 rock album of all time, sales-wise, Back in Black by AC/DC. Debate Satan. Didn't you see my debate with Marty Leeds? I felt like I was debating Satan. A very incoherent, possibly high Satan. I just turned off a commenter. He says, I've only been here a few minutes and you went political. Too bad. Bye. See ya, Karen. MJ is innocent. Did he really go because of the 30-second mention of the word politics? It seems like it. It's okay. This channel is not for everyone. I know that. It's just for Chads and Stacy's. Orthodox Chads and like the 4 or 5 Orthodox Stacy's that are in my audience as well. We are the tip of the spear, changing the culture, changing the world with orthodoxy. We say a lot of things on this channel that don't go over well with everyone, and it's okay. It's not meant for everyone. It's meant, again, to edify, entertain, and educate the world from an Orthodox Christian perspective. We have 104 people, beautiful, lovely people. Thank you all for being here. I do have to go to work in a couple minutes. So I hope that this video has destroyed Roman providence theory once and for all. I feel like nothing more needs to be said about it, at least by me, certainly. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I looked at it for a week, put it back down, threw it away, because that's what it was worth. Nothing. It was garbage on the sidewalk of philosophy, right? And Valiant claims to have a philosophy degree. I don't know how he got that. Or it was some secular philosophy atheist degree. Who knows? Who knows? Will I make a special for 10,000 subs when I get there? Yeah. Yeah. Once I get to 9,000 or so, I'll start playing with ideas. Maybe I'll write you guys a song or something. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, I will see those of you on my Rockfin channel tomorrow, where I put up video number 2 in the Christ and the Minor Prophets series, where we go over the book of Obadiah, the shortest book in the entire Bible. It's a whopping 21 verses long. And yet within those 21 verses, the church fathers mined an enormous amount of spiritual gold and wisdom. It took me hours to get through those 21 verses with church father commentary. And I will share it with you tomorrow if you're subscribed to me on Rockfin on that channel. For the rest of you, I will be doing, I think, a radio interview next Wednesday. I'll share the link with you guys when I have that. And I'm going to put the second Christ and the Minor Prophets actual Bible study up on Rockfin. It's my plan next Thursday, which will be the book of Haggai. I think is how you pronounce it. I don't know. It's a very unusual name. First, the introduction last week. Tomorrow, Obadiah. Next week, Haggai. Thank you all for being here. God bless you. I hope you all have a wonderful day and that God blesses, guides, protects, heals, keeps, and saves every one of you beautiful people. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Good night, and I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.